Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions. We've got guesses. I'm Nash. I've been doing this for a ridiculous amount of time, but in addition to doing RDA, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, also works in IT. If you have something that we can potentially help you with, or you're curious about, or something regarding tech, you can go ahead and send us your questions to requests@radiodeadair.com. We will do our best to help you out. How you doing, Mike?
Not bad. We got through that mass iPhone rollout at work. It's done.
That's good. That was ridiculous.
They made me get an iPhone. I was the only person in the entire IT team who does not have a work phone. So I have one now.
Why?
And I did.
Why do they make you get one?
I did have them give me the list of all available phones. And I went and looked through the numbers so I could find a number that I liked. I was vetoed on my first choice of numbers, in that I was not allowed to have a work phone number that ended with 0666, of which 2 were available.
Oh, well, I have been dealing with an ear infection the past few days. I've been taking it easy today. I think I'm doing
clean your earbuds.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
The only reason I say that is because I've had coworkers who say, I keep getting ear infections. I go, do you clean your earbuds? Do you ever replace them? No.
This is like the first one I've gotten in ages, Mike. I know. Okay.
See, that's the same thing they say.
Yeah, I have been medicating. I have been doing some hydrogen peroxide flushes, and I've been trying to do a leave and look after myself. I think I'm doing a little better now, even though my throat started getting a little scratchy today. But I am rallying to get this part done at least, and we'll see how things go. I'm glad y'all are here. Thank you for putting up with me completely falling to pieces. Welcome to trying to make a living doing streaming stuff. If you get sick, oh boy. But I'm all right tonight. We can handle things. We've got some questions already, but let's see. We also I've got some news stories. Let's get to those.
And I would categorize our news stories as dumb, dumber, and dumbest.
Well, first of all, we're going to start with Microsoft again. It's deja vu all over again. And they're saying it's time to kill the control panel again. Now, if you haven't been following along for, over a decade now, control panel has been an element of Windows since dang near the beginning. It's a place where it puts little applets that control various aspects of Windows. And it was, if your program or your hardware wanted to have a special control panel, you would just drop it into control panel and boom, there you go. It's simple. It was modular. It was,
and it is a great thing for your IT personnel to go to and say, I need to change the setting on your machine. There we go. Done. Or alternately, for that, when you contact your IT person and you say to them, how do I do X? And they just give you the simple instruction that says, go to the control panel, click this thing, do this other thing, you're done.
Now, I can't believe it's 12 years ago. 12 years ago, who was it for? Was it for with iPhone, Apple with the iPad? I think Apple's iPad started the whole thing. 12 years ago, we were in the throes of the tablet era, what they were calling the post-PC era, which was one of the dumbest proclamations of all time. The idea that everyone was going to abandon their laptops and desktops for tablets, and PCs were dying. We were gonna. It's 12 years later. My PC has apparently been dying for 12 years. Never mind the fact that there were many utilities for which tablets, especially tablets 12 years ago, were ill equipped to handle, particularly video processing and such. So, in order to enable this, Microsoft, who, much like they are now, chased a shiny trend, which was this whole post-PC era, and they decided they were going to redesign all of Windows around the idea that we would all be using tablets from now on.
Now,
even though we weren't using tablets yet.
Yeah, as I said, that was several years ago, and we never made the switch to tablets. Don't get me wrong, there are some people who absolutely use an iPad and use it daily, and maybe even use it for most of their stuff. But it is not anywhere near a significant market slice that you would need to redesign your entire user interface around.
Part of this redesign was they added something called settings, which was intended to replace control panel. And it sucks. For one thing, it doesn't have nearly the utility or flexibility or depth that control panel offers for settings.
And a lot of, the other way to put that is a lot of features are missing or are not in a usable way. I'm going to give you my primary example. The most common question I get at work that involves the settings panel or the control panel, or a third way, is how do I add a network printer? On the control panel, this is easy. The third way, which is directly going on the network to the printer and just double clicking on it, is also relatively easy. In settings, it would be easy if your network has a couple dozen printers, because then you can just scroll down and look for the printer you're looking for. When you are having basically a national network that has thousands and thousands of printers, you can't use this.
Yeah.
And even the search on there is stupid slow in trying to find, you just want the local? I can't tell what local is. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems with settings is it's mainly focused around a low power user, a home user. It's not focused toward the corporate environment or a large user base or even someone who has some technical knowledge. And just on another level, aesthetically, it's badly designed. Let me show you here. This right here is my fonts window. This is fonts. This is from control panel. And as you can see, it is easy to follow along here. Disappeared. No, come back. There it is. It's easy to follow along. Here are all my fonts on the right-hand panel, and you can get a little preview of what they are, and you can scroll down through them. And then if you want more information, you just double click on them and go from there.
So Barely Coherent in the channel asks, they're going to make a business version of Windows, aren't they? Well, that's Windows Enterprise. That already exists. It's not going to have its own control panel.
Over here on the left-hand side, you can see there is font settings, get more font information. There's a bunch of useful stuff in the left-hand panel, right?
Yep.
Now, this is fonts in settings, and you'll notice it still retains the touch focus, because over here on this side is a menu of stuff that's not very helpful to fonts. This is for navigating the settings panel, which that's not helpful for what you're trying to do. So you have none of those useful options, like, all that. That's not there. Those aren't there. It's also very cluttered, ugly. I don't know why each font has its own separate like sentence to identify it, because over here that's not what you want from fonts, because you want to be able to see them compared to other fonts. So if you want to see ABC, you look at ABC. You don't look at, seven. Oh, it's so bad. It's so stupid. And it's like this all up in.
You know what gets me though, Nash? Someone for each font had to come up with the line that it uses. I mean, it looks like they actually maybe only have 5 or 6 lines that they go through, but still.
This is the utility of this is incredibly limited, super limited. So the design philosophy around settings is not meant for power users. It's not meant to actually dig down and find your settings. If you're using multiple audio devices, good fucking luck, because that's an issue I have quite often.
Audio devices. It's their settings is garbage, absolute garbage, to the point where audio manufacturers are going back and making their own little panels again, rather than using the Windows settings one, which, the control panel one used to be okay. It was not spectacular. Maybe you needed to use the vendor one still a little bit, but you could get away with the Windows one. But settings is just trash.
Yeah, this is sounds, and it's very simplistic. As opposed to, let's say, if I want to look at my playback devices, bring that up. There it is. Well, not on my side. Here's this is playback devices in sound. This is a control panel applet. All of them are listed, easily available. They have configuration buttons, defaults, properties. Recording devices, the same thing. And this is kind of important because, for example, if I want to do my format of recording for my audio interface, 1 channel, 24-bit, 9600 hertz. I don't know how to find this setting over here in sounds. Maybe I can try it out here. This sound control panel. If I click that, what happens? It brings up the control panel. Yeah. But yeah, over here, if I want to, let's see, if I hit device properties, additional device properties, that just brings up the control. That just brings up the control panel again, and it actually brings up the wrong thing. So the point I'm making here, the point we're talking about is,
this is a bad
settings
call.
Is not ready for prime time. They're going
settings
to
has
need
been
at
around
least
for a decade and is not ready for prime time.
They're going to need at least a full development year of focusing on nothing but redesigning settings to add the functionality from control panel to settings.
Yes.
If they don't, it is going to be a disaster. And there is going to be a cottage.
Someone will write a third-party app that you'll be able to download, which might be dangerous.
There's going to be a cottage.
Because it'll be doing stuff directly in your OS, and you'll have to go, do I really trust this person who wrote this app?
There's going to be a cottage industry that springs up. Like, for example, right now, here's a utility I already use. It's called Ear Trumpet. It's very simple, but it just gives you quick access to stuff like the volumes mixer and recording playback devices. It's a fast way to navigate, and control panel for audio is already not great, but it's way better than settings. Just this little Ear Trumpet thing, it doesn't do anything but just add a quick little menu to your what do they call this little thing on the taskbar? The tray. There you go, tray icon. It adds a little tray icon that you can add. You can just Yeah, good program. There's going to be a lot of programs like that to try to bridge the gap. And the idea that they've been sort of dragging their feet on this and now they're suddenly going to leap forward. This is going to be a problem. This is, if you want to know why people drag their feet on upgrading to new versions of Windows, this is why people drag their feet on upgrading.
It's because of garbage. It's because of non-upgrades like this. And so that was our dumb story.
Now, we actually dig down. We've been talking about this for a bit. We got a little bit more news on this week. More news about Ryzen 9000. It's not going well.
No, this is the dumber story.
Yeah. So let me start with this. Give me a second to get my brain together here.
I'll talk that.
So one of the biggest problems with the Ryzen 9000 release was that
the upgrade percentage to the price is not comparable.
But AMD released a lot of material before the release of the CPU that indicated the performance gains were going to be fairly big. Not as big as the jump from Ryzen 5000 to 7000, but it was going to be big. There were going to be performance gains to be had, notable ones, worthwhile ones.
Worthwhile, yeah.
But if you've noticed anything about AMD's marketing department for the past 2 years, probably it started in earnest with the release of the Radeon RX 7000 GPUs. They've started, lying in their benchmarks.
I was going to say smoking their own product, but, lying works.
Lying. Straight up lying. They were saying there's going to be performance levels for Ryzen 9000 that it simply was not ever going to be capable of. And the way they got some of those numbers was some cherry picking, deliberately hobbling their competition in testing to make it look like their products were better. It was just so now that Ryzen 9000 is actually out, the sales like they did the same thing again. Yeah, they looks like they cherry picked. The people were expecting one thing, and when it actually got, the product was available, they got something else. And the backlash has been fast and furious. The sales on Ryzen 9000 are the worst AMD has seen in a decade.
Yep.
That's terrible. And it harkens back to
say you've all heard me say the last couple shows that I'm probably building a new computer by the end of the year, and I was looking at Ryzen 9000. I may still be, because by the time it comes out, by the time I'm doing that, they're going to have cut the price dramatically to sell them.
Maybe. What this harkens back to is...
I am disappointed in the numbers.
What this harkens back to is about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, AMD... We've talked about this before, tried to release a new architecture, a big leap forward to compete with Intel from their moderately successful Phenom series CPUs. And that was the Bulldozer architecture. And the first FX series CPUs from that architecture, once they were tested, they seemed to be, in some instances, slower than the Phenom CPUs they were intended to replace. Sales for that tanked. In fact, that nearly killed AMD. Now, this is a little bit different here because Ryzen 7000 is a fairly solid CPU, and the 7800X3D is still the fastest gaming GPU in the world. So this is kind of a debacle.
That's a good word to describe it.
It is not the kill shot that we almost lost AMD. It was so bad. One Well, they've had to go back and revise a lot of those numbers.
Yes.
And instead of their claim that Ryzen 9000 could beat Intel's 14th gen in gaming performance, because previously only the X3D CPUs could do that because they had the extra stacked 3D RAM on the cache to be able to, improve the frame rate performance. AMD was claiming their regular 9000 CPUs could beat the 14th gen. Wrong. That now they're having to say, okay, it has parity, which is also kind of wrong because that's also cherry picking. But
and one of the ways they got this parity, or at least a number of the numbers they got, was by running it in super secret administrator mode, which we talked about last week. And that got them some percentage points, which last week we said, oh, well, they got this, and, there's supposed to be a Windows update that will actually make what we did in administrator mode viable in regular user mode. And now that's maybe being walked back a little bit as well.
They have Wendell over at Level 1 Techs. You should definitely watch Level 1 Techs on YouTube. Very, very intelligent gentleman. Did some extensive testing over the course of the last week on Ryzen 9000. And he discovered a lot, not all, but a lot of the performance claims do hold up on Linux. Ryzen 9000 does have a pretty good performance gain, probably closer to 10%. Not a huge leap forward, but a pretty good 10% bump across the board for productivity and gaming tasks. That's pretty good. But it's exclusive to Linux. He had to do the admin account on Windows 11. He actually ran Windows 10 in there as well. There's also a couple of other settings like VBS, which is virtualization based security, which is for virtual. It's complicated, but basically he had to fiddle with a ton of Windows settings and do the hokey pokey and turn himself around to get to different performance level. It's a mess. And what this is pointing to is a couple things. Number one, Ryzen 9000 is not everything AMD promised. That's number one. Number two, it's okay. It does offer some performance upgrades from Ryzen 7000. It's not the grand leap forward they were promising, but it does have a little bit of a performance increase. And number three, AMD. What's going? I got this from Moore's Law is Dead. It's another YouTuber, rumor site. So take this as grain of salt. What AMD did was for the internal teams working on Ryzen, they had two teams leapfrogging each other. So they had the first team that was working on Zen 1 worked on Zen 3. And or not Zen, it was Zen 1 was Zen 2 Plus, I think. They have, because they added the 2 Plus. Anyway, they had one team working on one aspect of Zen and one part of Ryzen, one working on other. And they would just leapfrog each other. Well, Ryzen 7000 team and Ryzen 9000 team were actually two different teams. And apparently the Ryzen 9000 team did not want to use the microcode that the Ryzen 7000 team was using. They preferred to use the one they'd use on an earlier edition of Ryzen CPUs, Zen 2, I believe.
Why?
And
they're dumb.
Because they liked it better. They understood it better. They thought it was better. They didn't want to use the more modern version of the microcode. And the result is the team there's competition between teams within the corporation, which is always a surefire recipe for bullshit. It is
Which large department store was it? Was Sears that had their own internal teams competing, like menswear was competing with women's wear and things like that. This is the same sort of thing, and it works just as fantastically. Look at where Sears is now.
Microsoft has also done this. They had their Office teams competing with their Windows teams and stuff like that, and it's crazy. Why are you trying to do this like law of the jungle, survival of the fittest crap? What's wrong with you? That's not how you. The fucking Steve Jobs did this shit back in the day with the Mac teams and the Lisa teams and all that crap back in the day.
I think it's allowing far too many libertarians to run companies. That's what it is.
What this results in is this competition at each other, actually at different ends within the company, instead of working toward the same direction. Is much of what's going wrong with Ryzen 9000 is software, because the team that was working on it goofed it up. That's why you have Ryzen. Everybody's like, well, Ryzen 7000 was so good. What's wrong with Ryzen 9000? Hardware-wise, it's pretty solid. There have been no hardware-related, like Intel side of things, they're having hardware issues.
Yep.
And that's
a number of hardware issues.
AMD's not having that. On AMD side, the hardware is rock freaking solid. The architecture, the actual design of the chip, just fine. No problems there. This is all down to how it interacts with Windows, how it behaves in BIOS, just a whole bunch of these different little things that were not optimized properly. And it's maybe Ryzen 9000 will get to a point that it will be consistently delivering 10% performance uplift over Ryzen 7000. However, that's going to take a little bit of work. They're going to have to work with Microsoft. They're going to have to redesign some drivers. They're going to have to put out some AGISA updates and BIOS updates. Because
so what I'm hearing, though, Nash, is the Ryzen 10,000 or 11,000 series, whatever they're going to call the next one, which will have the other microcode team working on it, will be fantastic.
Maybe. We don't know. Maybe it could be. We'll see. But here's the stupid part here. Because they goofed up the software. Wait.
Here's the stupid part.
Because they goofed up the software and lied about the performance numbers and just made a complete mess in the press about how Ryzen 9000 is perceived by... This is essentially, they released a beta version of the software to control the chips. And by the time they get this sorted out, several more months will have gone by, in which time people will be like, well, I should just buy a Ryzen 7000 CPU because these 9000 ones are a mess and the 7000s are about as good. So why get a 9000? It's too much of a headache. No one's buying they're going to have to put the 9000 CPUs on significant discount to make up the lack of sales. And by the time they do, they will have lost so much money. I mean, if these things had the performance numbers, they probably would have had more brisk sales day one than what they're going to have now. The AMD is losing a ton of money on this just because their internal teams were slow. And I'm not talking, when I say a ton, I mean like millions of dollars in sales lost, and in just, yeah, it's ridiculous. Plus, there's news now. I think AMD is trying to give Ryzen 9000, the base CPUs, a little bit more room on the stage. They're delaying the 9000 X3D CPUs to CES 2025, which I believe is mid-January.
Okay.
So The X3D versions, the gaming versions of these CPUs won't be available for Christmas, which means people will just buy the 7,000 X3D CPUs instead because, yeah.
It's a lot cheaper and it's about the same performance.
I mean, the X3, the 78, even if they get this Ryzen 9000 stuff straightened out, the 7800 X3D is still by far and away the fastest gaming CPU in the world. It can deliver frames faster than any other chip just by virtue of the 3D V-cache RAM. That's what does it. None of the other chips have that, so AMD right now is competing with itself, and it's a mess. It's stupid. This didn't have to happen.
Nope.
I hope people are. Two things need to happen. Number one, a lot of people need to be fired. Number two, the corporate culture of AMD is what caused this. That needs to be changed. You should not have two different CPU design groups competing with each other. It should just, they should be working together on every step of the way. They should be in concert. If you have another team working ahead of the previous team, that's not bad, but they should not be adversarial. That's what's kicking your ass right now. Anyway, finally, one more story this week. This is one Mike brought up. This is what the hell fucking happened here.
I'll tell you exactly what happened here.
So, there is Georgia Tech is in some serious trouble right now. The government sued them in federal court because for some ridiculous reason, the tech admins at Georgia Tech, who were doing work for cybersecurity for the Department of Defense, decided they weren't going to abide by Department of Defense guidelines in their research.
And by Department of Defense guidelines, we mean they weren't actually going to secure their systems with either A, antivirus, or B, intrusion detection and monitoring systems. So what this is, anytime the DoD or any of the component agencies, Navy, Marines, Air Force, etc., have a computer system, or they have a contractor with a computer system, or they're giving grant money to someone, in this case, with a computer system, that computer system has to be accredited. The accreditation process is called RMF, Risk Management Framework, although there are other variations of this that can be done. Reading through this, it sounds like they were doing RMF. And what that is, it is a data-driven accreditation system. Now, I don't mean, in this case, you collect a lot of information about the system, although you do that too. What I mean is the first step in anything like this is you have a spreadsheet which lists all the possible data types the DoD cares about. So PII, health, environmental, whatever. And you check off which ones apply. What's going to be on this system? And each of these lines has a confidentiality, an integrity, and an availability rating. And those 3 or 4 ratings are not applicable, which is, I think, only under confidentiality, and that's only when it's public-facing stuff. Low, medium, or high, which is very simple. And once you've checked off all your data types, you tot up everything. And the high watermark for a category is the level you have to do that category at. With me so far, Nash?
No.
Okay. So let's say you've got a system that has 10 different data types. We're not even going to worry about what the data types are. There's cat girl gifs, there's memes, there's whatever. Most of those categories say confidentiality low or even not applicable. But one of those says social security numbers. Oh, that's at least medium, maybe high. I honestly don't remember without looking at the massive chart. So that category is now high. Integrity is how important is it the data not be modified by accident. And you have your levels on that. And so you tot up everything. So if 7 of your 10 are low, 2 are medium, and 1 is high, your category there is high. And then availability is how important is it that this system be available? And again, if 9 of your 10 are low and 1 is medium,
you're making this really complicated.
It is kind of complicated to describe. So what happens is you get a set of controls, okay? You use those 3 categories to get a set of controls, and then you do the work on those controls. And these guys did not do any of the work. Now, I'm going to state here, he got a grant. I can almost guarantee part of that grant had line items in there paying for information assurance, i.e. cybersecurity, to be done to the system. And he didn't do that. And this stuff is
did not install
difficult.
He did not install antivirus.
Yep.
He did not install intrusion detection. Because that's the part there. He didn't want to install antivirus on government that had classified information. He decided, he doesn't like putting AV detection software on his lab's machines.
Well, actually, what I'm seeing here is that it was not classified information. It's a special category called controlled unclassified information, which is its own special little snowflake. Because there's unclassified, there's classified, and between the two is controlled unclassified. But the deal is, this work that you have to do to accredit a system is not difficult. It's just time consuming and often very, very tedious. There are going to be no action movies ever done about system accreditors. It's not going to happen. There might be a comedy, but a small system might take about 2 to 3 weeks to do all the paperwork. And that's a dedicated person. A kind of lab that they describe here, probably 2 to 3 people and a month or so to do all the paperwork and then maintain that accreditation. Again, it's not difficult. It's just tedious. And this guy is like, no, I don't want. By the way, did you notice what his nickname is?
Manos. Yes.
Manos. I wish those hands of fate would just push him over.
The IT director for the lab was allowed to use other mitigating measures instead, such as relying on the school's firewall for additional security. And this is the IT director, okay? The IT director said he thought Georgia Tech ran antivirus scans from its network. What? However, this assumption turned out to be completely wrong. The school's networks never provided antivirus protection, and even if it had, the lab used laptops that were regularly taken outside the network perimeter. So these laptops were running without antivirus on strange networks with Department of Defense information on them.
Yes. And one other thing I note here, this says, hang on, let me find the reference here because I want to make sure I get this right. It says, the second problem was that Georgia Tech had to self-assess its security and submit a score showing how many of the 110 NIST-listed security controls it had in place. So that's what I meant. You get your low, medium, high across your 3 categories, and you get a set of controls. So they got a set of 110 controls. And they said they were compliant with 98 out of 110. Now, there's a problem there, Nash.
They lied.
Additionally, they lied. In my world, compliant with 98 out of 110 means you failed 12 of them. Now, maybe they're saying, those 12 we didn't do are not applicable. And not applicable is fine, but you still have to justify not applicable.
Well, in this case, they didn't justify it. It wasn't 98. It wasn't 98 out of 110. It was 0.
Well, no. I will say they're probably accidentally compliant with a few. And the reason I say that is because many of these controls are things you can do scans and you get results for, and you can say, okay, we're compliant with this control because this scan showed, hey, we're compliant. And this is only covers this thing you can scan for. Some of the controls are things you cannot scan for that have to be checked manually. Like, do we have emergency lighting in the space? Do we have fire suppression? So I imagine that purely by accident, because they haven't been sued by OSHA as well, that they were compliant with those sort of controls inadvertently.
Well, the takeaway here is what's going to happen is this is setting a precedent because Georgia Tech is not the only institution that does this sort of research. And they're the potentially we are going to find, because of the lax enforcement, apparently, we're going to find a lot of major institutions that are doing defense data research are going to be non-compliant. And that means we could...
The reason they were non-compliant is because they were allowed to self-assess. It doesn't sound like auditors ever came in and checked them. This was discovered through whistleblowers.
So it's potentially we have data leaks like you would not believe.
Oh, man. No, I guarantee you we did. Okay, yeah. I'm going to give a real-world example from work that I can sort of talk about. Back several years ago, we had a different kind of accreditation vehicle. And it was called PIT. It was called Platform IT. And there was another one called DIACAP. Both of these have basically been done away with. But PIT, you could do in 6 pages of paperwork. Okay? DIACAP took about 100 for the similar system, and that was for a small system. So everyone looked at the amount of work that you had to do PIT and the amount of work you had to do to DIACAP, and they said, we're going to do PIT. Now, PIT had a checklist you had to go through, and if you bounced out of the checklist early, you couldn't do PIT. So what did people do? They lied. And eventually, I didn't, because I knew better then. Basically, I didn't want to get fired for anything like that. Those of us who were legitimately PIT got punished by all the people lying because we weren't allowed to do PIT anymore. What's happened with Georgia Tech here is the same sort of thing. These other places are not going to be allowed to self-assess in the future.
Yes. So, all right. Now we've got the news.
Yes, and that's and as it's mentioned in the comment section, and that's before we even get into War Thunder considerations.
All right, let's move on to your questions. If you have them, we are taking them. You send those to request@radiodeadair.com. We've got a few this week to get through. First of all, Diego here. Quick one, but complicated. Is it still a good time to be looking at used GPUs on eBay?
I mean, that's going to depend on which GPU you're looking at. I mean, you probably get a fabulous deal on a 660.
It's always kind of subjective about when is a good time to look for used GPUs. It kind of ebbs and flows. One of the best times to maybe start looking for used GPUs on eBay is just after the launch of a new generation of graphics cards. We are well away from any launches. The NVIDIA's 40 series is completely done. Well, I say completely done. They're releasing a new 4070 that actually uses slower RAM. I don't know why they're doing this, but okay. But by and large, all of the 40 series GPUs have launched. There's not going to be a 4050, which is interesting. It brings up that whole trend that's happening of companies using their prior generation hardware as their budget hardware, which is a very bad idea. But NVIDIA the 40 series is done. We're not going to see anything until the 50 series. And the 50 series is going to be for the first 6 months. It's just going to be the super high end stuff. we won't get into the stuff normal people can buy until about 6 months in. And that's probably not going to start launching until 2025. AMD is rumored to have their Radeon RX 8000 series coming very soon, possibly before the end of the year. But again, those are also going to be the high-end ones. What you need to do is you need to wait until, and not just the announcement, but the actual release to sales of the mid-range stuff. And then start after like about a few weeks, like 3 weeks, I'd say is a good time frame. Start looking at the used cards. That's when people will have bought their new stuff, had it in the machine for a little while, made sure everything's working right,
and not catching the machine on fire.
Yeah, taken out their old card and then prepared that to go on eBay. So right now is not the best time. You're not going to find any super deals. The prices as they are right now are going to be about that price for a while. You're not going to start seeing any real fluctuation there until Radeon RX 8000s come out, and not till like the 8700 or so starts coming out. The prices on those are reputed to be going to be pretty good. We'll see. But the used prices right now, used prices are going to be really steady. There's nothing going to be changing. I mean, if you're okay with what's available right now for the prices they are available right now, it's a good time, but you're not going to see any big deals or shifts until new cards start coming out. It's kind of how it always goes. Next one. This is from Henry from Virginia. Hey, dudes. Any advice on what I need to set up a soldering station? Want to try my hand at refurbing some stuff from the local Goodwill. What will I need?
Okay. I would say I would start with a large flat space.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something you would do on a crowded desk with lots of flammable items around it. This may sound common sense. Unfortunately, I've worked with enough people over the years to go, common sense is not common. I would say a fire extinguisher as well. Just I'd rather have one on hand than not.
Well, that's a little far away afield, but obviously a soldering iron and solder. I tended to find I like an actual soldering station with a place you can put the soldering iron. I'll see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Not just like an iron with a tip on the end. A full-on station, especially one that has a control for temperature. It's a little more expensive, but I would argue it's not that much more expensive, and it's not crazy expensive. Like, here it is. Here's a good example. This looks pretty decent, honestly. Let's see, bring this over here. Yeah, this one here on Amazon is only $42, $43, and you get a pretty good deal. That it's got a lot of. This actually has a lot of what I would recommend. Comes with solder. It has a place to mount your soldering iron when you're not using it. It's got a spool for the solder. Minor tools. Got a solder sucker, which is what you need to remove solder after. It's yeah. It's got your sponge, got your helping hands. These are for holding circuit boards in place in weird angles where you need to solder in weird places. So those come in really handy. Spare tips. This is a lot of what I would recommend getting here.
And you said that one's 40? Okay.
$43. Yeah.
I will say, just to point out, the same exact station under the name brand it's actually sold under rather than a cheap knockoff is $69 on Newegg, and that's Xtronic.
Yeah,
And it actually comes with a couple more of those holders.
Part of what makes this kind of station preferable to just getting the because you can just buy like an iron like this, but having a station here, part of aside from all the little accoutrements is you have temperature control, which comes in handy. It's different electronic devices will respond differently to different temperatures. Some can't take too high. If you turn up the temperature too high, you can definitely damage it. Another thing I'd recommend looking into getting because they're not expensive right now, is a soldering mat. And the reason why is they're silicon based, so they don't burn and they're resistant to heat. So if you drop your pen, it's fine. It's also, a lot of them have organization. They have holders for small bits and pieces. They have magnets on them to hold screws and stuff so they don't go flying. A lot of useful things built into just, a basic solder mat. So yeah, for basic stuff, this is about all you need. Maybe you want to get flux as well. Flux is a goo that you put on the work you're trying to solder. It helps solder adhere to metal easier, and also it actually helps you wick away solder. If you use a solder wick, flux helps with that quite a bit. It's not expensive stuff. Now, depending on what you're going to be refurbing, another thing you might want to think about getting is a hot air station. This is getting a little into the weeds and going a little further afield. Hot air stations are what you need to, if you want to work on devices that have surface mount components. Those are very small and they are not designed to be worked with a soldering iron. You actually have to blow hot air on them until the solder melts. Then you can move the stuff around. It's because of how surface mount components. I talked about this not long ago. We used to have, everything used to be something called through-hole components. That meant you would have like a resistor with long wire legs on either sides, and you'd bend it down and you'd put it through actually holes in the circuit board that had little copper pads around them, and you solder it in place. We stopped using through-hole components for most things and started moving to something called surface mount because it was cheaper. The way surface mount works is, instead of soldering in each individual component by hand through the holes and whatnot, you take a circuit board, which already has little metal pads laid out on it. You have an automated system to drop or very gently place little components all over it. And then you put the whole thing through a heated area. And those little components that have been mounted on the surface just solder themselves into place. And that's how it goes. It's really easy and fast to make a lot of circuit boards, complicated circuit boards, at a very fast pace. The trouble is, if you try to fix it later, we're talking real itty bitty parts, and soldering irons don't work. So that's where hot air stations come in. You also maybe want to think into getting a little bit of a USB microscope for that sort of work too. This depends on what you're going to be working on, however. But I would definitely recommend having some sort of soldering station, one that can, with variable heat. I have something like that. It comes in very handy for me. Also, they don't have it showed here, but one of the things that's invaluable for cleaning off a soldering iron is they have these little brass or steel wool, like spun balls of. Let's see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. Brass sponge, or it's called let me open it up. Let me show it down. here we go. Yeah, these dang things. They kind of look like the steel wool balls you use for cleaning at your sink. What these are for is you jam the soldering iron tip into it and you swish it around a little bit and pull it out. And what these do is they clean off gunk off the end. At the bottom of this, there's usually some sort of tip cleaner or tip tinning. Regardless, these are very useful to have for keeping. I mean, having the little sponge with water on it is helpful. These are helpful as well. So, okay, that's about what I'd recommend. Just know you're going to screw up a whole bunch. Get used to it. Eventually, you'll get it right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and maybe a fume.
Yes.
A fume extractor. Let's see.
And by the way, on the screw, don't get discouraged by it. When I haven't soldered anything in a long time, but I used to have to try to solder chips onto boards back in school, and I was no good at it because I'm a computer engineer, and I'm not expected to be. Fortunately, I had electrical engineers on my team, and they were fantastic at it.
This is a fume extractor. I'd recommend getting one of these as well. It's a little fan with a very small filter. And what you do is you put this very close to where you're actually doing the soldering, because quite a bit of solder, especially older solder, is lead-based. And if you hit that with the soldering iron, you're breathing lead.
Which is generally a bad idea.
There was actually, I don't know if you ever watched a show called Halt and Catch Fire, which if you are a geek, Halt and Catch Fire is amazing. You should definitely watch it at some point. It's got Lee Pace in it. It's a great show. It was on A&E for a while. One of the main characters in that show eventually died because he got brain damage from lead fumes off of soldering. Now, most people don't solder so much that it becomes, it's going to kill you, but it's generally not good to breathe in lead. This is just a nice little fan. You put it near your wherever you're working. It sucks in the fumes and it does basic filtration. That's all right. Okay, let's see. It's moving right along. Okay. Hi, Nash. Hi, Mike. Hello, cats. It seems like after a really long time, a bunch of different companies are finally releasing modern webcams. I was looking at Elgato and Razer and Logitech for streaming stuff, but I want to know if we better just get a DSLR like Nash has instead if I can find one used. Elgato's big camera is around $300, and I can get something like a Nikon D5300 used for the same money. What's the advantages, disadvantages? Okay. What you're watching right now, what we have on the stream right now, what you're watching for at least my end of things is I actually don't use a webcam. I have an older DSLR hand camera, or camera like you would use for shooting pictures or sometimes video as well. That's my webcam. I use that instead because compared to this is like I've been using these for a long time. This one I've got used about 2 years ago. Number one, the picture quality at the time, 2 years ago, the picture quality compared to what webcams were available on the market was so much better. So I mean, you can see right now, it looks a lot nicer.
Whereas I'm using a Logitech 1080p, and because that's all I need. But Nash is doing this professionally. I'm just sort of the sidekick.
Yeah, the DSLR because the webcams at the time just could not compete. They were very crappy. Logitech was like the highest end stuff. And it was okay. It was if you were doing office stuff where you needed to do video chat in an office, perfectly fine. You're doing this professionally, you might need something better. Yeah. So I got this It is 4K if I want, 4K 30 frame per second if I want to, but I'm actually at 1080p right now instead. It works fairly well. 4K, trying to do 4K video just for me would be, I think it'd be a little bit overkill. I could at some point maybe if I'm thinking about it, but anyway. Now, however, companies are trying to catch up to have something professional level webcam wise that's not a DSLR and or mirrorless, which is what has taken the place of DSLR. Logitech has not really stepped up all that much. They're still kind of focused mainly on office type stuff, or even their high end stuff. Like their highest end camera is like $200, and it's 4K. It's not great. It's okay, but it's not great. The only two companies right now that are more focused on that sort of thing, like I can show you over here. Let's bring this up. Here's what Logitech has. Their biggest one is their MX Brio 4K, and it's not a lot.
30 frames per second.
Yeah, 4K 30 frames per second, which means that's pushing it. When you see, all right, here's a little tip about webcams in general. When you see their rating, like if it says 1080p 60 frames per second, that means if you run it 1080p 60 frames per second, it's full out and it may be deficient in other areas because that's the full bit rate blasting through that camera's capable of. Bit rate is you can use your bit rate on just pure frame per second resolution, but then there's also other elements involved too, like exposure levels, white balance, contrast, other things. And exposure level can goof up frame rate, change frame, white balance, and all those sort of things. So if you say your camera has 1080p 60 frame per second, if you switch it down to 1080p 30 frame per second, it looks almost the same, but you give yourself a little bit of headroom to mess with some other functions on the camera to make it look better. So that FPS tends to be a little misleading in a lot of ways. Anyway, it's Logitech, they're serviceable, but for $200, Elgato has the Facecam Pro for about $300 to compete with webcams. They're marketing this as 4K 60 frame per second. One of the advantages of using a webcam like this that's designed by Elgato or its competitor over at Razer, which is one of the other companies that does this, is the Razer Kio Pro Ultra, which is also a 4K 60 frames per second webcam. One of the advantages of this is these are designed with software that allows you to mess with them a lot easier. Retrofitting a DSLR and a mirrorless camera to do this sort of stuff is just that, retrofitting. This was never intended to be a webcam. I've set it up to be a webcam. It doesn't like being a webcam. In fact, the way I connect this to my computer is I'm not doing this over USB. I'm using the HDMI out from the DSLR to an HDMI capture card in my computer. So all the controls for the camera and whatnot are not native into Windows. If I want to change any settings on it, I have to actually go over to the camera and mess with the camera. So one of the advantages here in this or any mirrorless camera that's actually intended to be used as a webcam, because there are some, one of the advantages is you get software options that and controls that they would not be available to you just using a DSLR, because you are effectively retrofitting. Yeah, I'm using a dummy. That's right, fanboy connoisseur. I'm using a dummy battery as well because DSLRs are not intended to be run off wall AC. So you have to use a special AC adapter that slides into the battery slot on the camera. It's weird. And the camera you mentioned, which is $300, the D5300, it's about $300. The camera you mentioned there, used, number one, that one can only do 1080p 60 frames per second. So you don't get 4K there. And the other downside to DSLR and mirrorless cameras, mirrorless, the difference between DSLR and mirrorless is, okay, try to sum this up very briefly because, we run out of time tonight. DSLR cameras have a little mechanism in them that pull the mirror that bounces the light to the receiver, pulls that out of the way. That's the shutter. It click, 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 click. It's a mechanism in there that pulls the mirror out of the way of the sensor and puts it back. It's analog. And the reason why is digital was not fast enough to, like what you saw in the camera, if you were just looking at it through a digital viewfinder and not an analog, like real light going into real analog without any digital aspects to it. Digital is not fast enough to accurately match the speed of real life. And photographers wanted it to be what you see is what you're shooting. Digital couldn't do that for the longest time until more recently. That's where mirrorless cameras come in. They don't have that shutter mechanism in them. That makes them more reliable because without the shutter mechanism, that's the thing that breaks the most in DSLR cameras. It's real complicated inside there. Without that shutter mechanism in there, they're more reliable. So that's one thing. You don't really have to consider that too much when using as webcam, but lenses is an issue. What you're that D5300 for like 300, you also have to get a lens with it, and lenses are expensive. I'm just using a kit lens for what you're seeing right now. This is not a complicated lens. I believe this is an 18 to 55 millimeter lens. It's just for this basic shot that doesn't do much. I can change the focus on it. I can, adjust the background. One of the nice things about DSLR is the background actually blurs a little bit because you can set a focus and then, it gives you more of a cinematic look, I guess you'd call it. But that's it's an added expense and it's something you have to screw around with. And webcams, you don't have to worry about that. They don't do that lens stuff. Honestly, if I was doing it right now, I would have gone with one of these over the DSLR if these were available at the time, because for only I like the Facecam Pro. Haven't owned one, haven't used one, just seen some demonstrations of it. Comparatively, for the money, for $300 and having software control over a whole bunch of stuff, this seems like a very nice option for Pro-Am sort of use. DSLR is kind of, if this had been available, if this kind of webcam had been available with the USB-C 3.0 connections and all the other stuff, if this had been around, I probably would have done this over the DSLR because the DSLR was way more expensive. It was, I was reusing a kit, a lens. It was like $700 for this D7500, Nikon D7500. It's an obsolete camera, but it's okay. I would have gone with one of these at the time. I don't think this is quite as good as what I have, but it's more affordable, it's more economical, and it makes more sense for doing this sort of stuff than the DSLR. So Can the Basecam Pro interactor connect with your Stream Deck? Yeah, probably. Elgato kind of makes their little ecosystem together. That is one of the advantages of one of these. You can control them a lot more easily via software than a DSLR. DSLRs, again, I just want to reiterate, using a DSLR or a mirrorless for a webcam, you are retrofitting something to do something it was not intended to do, really. Or even if it has that feature, it's not the main feature of that. It's not what it was intended to do primarily. These are primarily designed to be webcams, so they've got some advantages. All right, anyway, I guess that's probably the best way I could break it down. Take that as you will.
And to answer your question, can the Facecam Pro interact or connect with your Stream Deck? Yes, it can.
Yeah, I just said that.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. And finally, this one is all right. We're gonna have to do
this is an oh god one.
Yeah, this is from Colin. This is kind of complex. We're going to have to basically tell you to go to basic troubleshooting on this one. Let's get through what the issue is. Problem I'm having is kind of a multifaceted one. I'll split it up to 3 problems that probably have the same root cause. Right-clicking on my desktop caused it to load for about a minute before just nothing happened. The way I've dealt with this in the short term is by disabling NVIDIA CPL context menu extension, but that disabling things doesn't really solve the problem. When I play a YouTube video, it will freeze my entire screen when I can move my mouse around, but I can't interact with anything. It eventually plays, but whenever an ad plays, because ad blocks stop working, it might happen again. YouTube videos tend to start over after about 20 seconds. I've tried some things to fix this. I've tried using Firefox. I've updated all my drivers. I disabled ad block. Nothing worked, and there's nothing I could search for about this being a thing, so I don't know. All right. You're kind of I'm not entirely sure what the hell is happening here, Colin. So you're a little vague on this. I'm going to assume you're using at least Windows 10 or better, because you don't say you're using anything older. The best way to deal with some weirdness like this is to start with basic troubleshooting. The first thing I would recommend is hit Control-Shift-Escape at the same time. That will bring up Task Manager. I'll put this on the screen here. And what you want to do is at Task Manager, if you go over here to a little tab called Startup, what you're going to want to do, this is where all of your startup items are. And you'll notice you're like, God, Nash, you got a bunch. And you notice a bunch of them are disabled. What you are going to want to do is all of these startup devices, you can disable or enable them here. Disable everything. Disable every single, it's Windows 10. Okay. Disable everything in your startup and restart it and try it. If the problem persists, it's nothing in your startup. If it doesn't, then one at a time, re-enable your startup things until you find the one that causes the problem.
Now, let me actually back Nash up here a little bit. So, back up here. So, when you do your startup, you may note that some of them are already disabled. Okay? Make a note of which ones are already disabled so you don't re-enable those. You save yourself a little bit of time. Because you're going to be restarting repeatedly here.
Yeah. That's the first step for troubleshooting. If that does not work, I
think we're in safe mode then.
Yeah, you're going to want to try safe mode with networking. And this might, considering part of the problem there is YouTube. I'm not sure how well YouTube works in safe mode. But try safe mode and see if the behavior persists in safe mode as well, even, without disabling your startup devices. If it does not persist in safe mode, that also kind of narrows it down. Another place you're going to have to look is Event Viewer. This is a pain in the butt. You can go to hit your start button. When you search next to the start menu, you look for Event Viewer, type that in, and come on, pop up. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. Show it to everybody. Over here. whenever something goes wrong in Windows, it's supposed to log itself over here in event viewers. And you have Windows logs, applications, if they're goofing stuff up, security issues, setups, the system itself, if something goofs up. And you notice even I have errors here. Everybody kind of has errors here. Secure boot update failed to update a secure boot variable with error. Oh, great. That's going to be fun. I'll have to figure that one out later. In any event, if something pops up here, that's where you're going to have to see what's going on and try and find an error there. If that doesn't work, if the safe mode, if things work in safe mode, but they don't work in regular desktop, well, then you know something is going on in your desktop. If it doesn't work in safe mode, you are in big trouble.
Hey, Nash.
Huh.
I have that exact same secure boot error.
It's probably a Windows update goofed up. Yay! I have to figure out what that is. So one other thing you can try is if you have a restore point, go back to before this error started. If you have a backup, reload the backup to before this error started. That's another good way to work around it. It still doesn't tell you exactly what caused it, and that's a problem with Windows. The complexity involved means some weird error can start up and there will be no indication, no clue, no real straight line to identify the cause. You have to sort of poke around and investigate and figure it out yourself. It's stupid. Most of the time, we've said this before, when you have a weird ass glitch and you cannot nail down what's causing it in Windows, this is what major IT companies do. This is what the government does. This is what institutions do. This is what pretty much everybody who has to service 10 or more computers, I'd say. What they do is if you get enough weird glitches like this, they will reimage your machine. They will bring it back to scratch. They will start it over. They will just wipe Windows and start over. Because that is usually the simplest, most time efficient, most easiest way to fix one of these goofy ass problems, because otherwise you are going to be chasing your tail for days or potentially weeks. I've chased my tail on this too, on some of these issues like this. You're going to be trying to dig down for a long period of time to find this specific weirdness that is meshed up. So the best fast solution, if you cannot figure out which element's doing it, is just to start over. Is there a quick way to download all your apps and logins if you reinstall Windows? There are backups and backup programs that will back up like your Windows profile, your documents, blah, 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 all that stuff. I haven't checked those in a while, but there are some like migration software tends to have backup stuff like that as well. You'd have to look that sort of thing up. Unfortunately, my best recommendation here is if you cannot pin down through the startup, disabling stuff in startup and safe mode, and event viewer, if those cannot help you pin down the root cause of this issue, and Googling doesn't help. Googling's another one that can help sometimes. If that doesn't help, your best option, unfortunately, with Windows is to start over. It sucks. But that is pretty much every IT department has done this same calculus. They're like, okay, we could spend week figuring out hours and hours figuring out what's wrong with your computer because there's some stupid glitch in Windows, or we can just start the damn thing over and you pick up where you left off and put your data back and you're good. And that's that typically is
I mean, that's what we do at work. I mean, literally, we got a guy, he pulls all the data off the machine, unless the user puts it in an unusual place, which we ask about because we're tired of users coming back and saying, I didn't get all my data. Well, your machine's been re-imaged, so that's a bit too late now. Yeah. And then we just re-image the machine. Now, sometimes we don't have to re-image the machine because testing goes, oh yeah, no, that's a bad motherboard. We'll replace that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a hardware issue, that pops up too. But yeah, it's the most cost effective because Windows is just so complex. There's so many different moving parts, so many different softwares, drivers, hardware, all of it interacting with one another, that trying to find specific issues sometimes can be so cost inefficient and time consuming that the best option is to just reimage the machine. This is also where keeping backups can come in handy, because if you keep a backup from before when your machine goofs up, you have a way to go back without losing absolutely all of your data and your installed programs and whatnot. It's essentially the same as reimaging the machine. It just takes away the need to back up all your crap and whatnot. So yeah, Otago Boy saying, when I was in private practice, I gave myself 6 hours to fix an issue before backup and wipe. Ended up losing sleep when I first started trying to pin down an issue. Yeah. Shit, most places won't even give you 6 hours. But yeah, that's why. You will chase your tail a lot on Windows specific glitches. If you're lucky, sometimes it's a big one a lot of people know about. They've figured out a way to fix it. But a lot of the times it's just a random combination of crap that causes bullshit. So hopefully that helps. Maybe what we've told you can help pin it down. That's just basic troubleshooting ideas. But worst comes to worst, you might have this most sensible way to handle weird Windows problems is to start over. Now, if you do start over and this persists, you're looking at a hardware error. Now, hardware error might show up in Event Viewer, which is a good reason to check Event Viewer, because hardware issues tend to pop up there. And they will stand out. They'll have big red X's and stuff. It's a much simpler to fix, but you're probably going to have to replace something. So, all right. I think that is going to do it. I'm going to double check, see if anything came in while we was. Oh, yeah, something came in. Oh, boy.
Is it a quick one?
It is not. I think we're going to have to grab this one next week because we're going to have to look into this one.
Because we're already like an hour.
Yeah, we're going to have to look. This one's going to need some research. So we'll probably have to do this next week. All right, folks, we'll be back next Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions for me and Mike, by all means, please send those to request@radiodeadair.com. Thank you for being here. Hope we were helpful to you, and we will see you next time. Good night. All righty, and I will see you on Monday.
Yep.
All right. You have yourself a good weekend.
Too, man.
Good night. As for me, I am going to attempt to take it easy for the rest of tonight, and I want to be back for a game stream tomorrow. We might just do Stardew Valley and go from there to make it, easy, and let me try to recover. I'm going to go buy some Theraflu. I think Theraflu, isn't that Theraflu is the best. Oh my God. I love Theraflu. If you get like sick with something, anything bothering your throat and ears and all that stuff, Theraflu is so good. Oh my God. It's so good. Anyway, tells you where my head's at, where that's like, oh my God, I want some Theraflu. That would be so good. Anyway, now I'm getting kind of ASMR on you right now. Just talking very quietly in the microphone and little know different details about different things. I could do a whole different stream. This microphone's really good for that. Anyway, I'm going to send you over to someone else because I need to rest and try to feel better. Thank you for putting up with me this week because I'm still not 100%. Potties are stupid. People are screaming outside my window. That's great. Yay. All right, I'm going to send you over to Spoonie. She's cool. Go hang out with her. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for putting up with me. Hopefully I will see you tomorrow. We'll do some game stream and hang. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Goodbye, everybody.